Good afternoon. Board and everyone that's listening out there. Welcome to the Surrey Police Board meeting, and I'll call it to order. The Surrey Police Board recognizes that our work takes place on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. I'll call the meeting to order now. Adoption of the agenda. Somebody move it. Seconder. All in favor? Against? Carried. Adoption of the minutes of March 30th, 2022. Somebody move it. Seconder. All in favor? Against? Carried. No delegations. We're into D reports, Chief Constable reports. The first one, Surrey Police Service IT Systems Progress. Chief Lubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Previously, I talked about our hiring strategy and the number of people we've hired, and then we've discussed deployment as well. Today, we're going to discuss the IT systems. It's very complex. A lot of work has to be done, and I'm happy to report that we've accomplished a lot. And here today is Deputy Chief Matsumoto, who will talk about a few main points about our progress to date regarding IT systems. Todd, over to you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see everybody. My pleasure to be able to update our IT systems. I think it's been a while since we've given an update, and this is I guess the verbal part of the report that's sitting in front of you, which I'll expand on. So these are, as the Chief has mentioned, fairly significant milestones that we reached to date, and I'll talk about 3 of them, or at least 2 of them, and I'll mention a minor one here. So we have the Surrey Police Service data center completed. The build is completed. It was a long road, and they're actually almost completed the testing phase as well, which is great. It's slightly ahead of schedule. Why is this significant? It allows us to move all of the users, so all of the administrative staff, the police officers and civilian staff that have an SPS laptop and working their daily work into the SPS systems. That is all being migrated over to the data center, which is an on-premise data center. So moving all of that from the sort of the city hosted network over to the SPS hosted network. So a big deal. A huge job for the IT team to do that heavy lifting, and they're going to start that migration shortly. So big milestone for the team. The second one, and this is a really good one for ourselves as well, is our Prime connection is complete. So we were waiting for the data center to get to a certain level. It didn't have to necessarily be complete, but it needed to be completed to a certain level to allow us to make that Prime connection. It has been connected, it is tested, and there is end-to-end connectivity through Prime BC, through the Prime system. And of course, to explain, Prime is the, I guess, legislated police records management environment that all police in British Columbia work through, and is a big milestone for SPS to finally get onto that system. Further to that, the Prime BC has built out what we call the Surrey Police Service. We call it the virtual jurisdiction. It's really the shell that allows now all of the work to transition over to the SPS team to start building all those connections and workflows and everything else that a normal Prime system has. So good news. And I'll just also try not to get too technical, but just add on to that. There is a wider picture here with respect to having that Prime connection, and that is also leveraging and confirming the connections we have through the National Police Information System. So that's out of Ottawa. They host CPIC. CPIC is used across Canada as one of our main repositories of data and information, and that allows that testing to begin, and CPIC Web and all the nice things that flow from that. So again, great news on that front. The minor update I have is this a piece of software or application we call AssetWorks. The only reason I'm mentioning it is not so much that it's ahead of schedule, and AssetWorks is a fairly robust program that allows us to manage all of our vehicles and all of the fleet. But I'm only mentioning it because this is one of those systems I believe that the board had asked at the very beginning of the IT bill that we try and leverage city systems as much as possible. Of course, PeopleSoft, the payroll system we do, and our financial management system we do. AssetWorks is another example of that. So we didn't have to go out and procure a separate system to manage our fleet. We simply just taken another instance of the city system and leverage that for ourselves. So that's the update. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, any comments, questions from the board? Director Modell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Deputy Matsumoto, for that very informative and exciting overview and update. Just one question on the asset management piece that you mentioned at the end. Is that a standalone, even though we're tapped into the city with the proper procedures and protocols to safeguard that information?
You're on mute, Todd.
Thank you. I never do that, and I've done it this time. The city systems that we are able to leverage are the instance is provided in a way that protects data. Now we're talking about fleet systems. There's not a lot of proprietary information that we would necessarily be concerned with. Unlike PeopleSoft, that of course has detailed information about staff and staff contacts and staff details, but that is for the most part partitioned from the city. There will always be a level of one or two people at the city that will have the master keys to the system that can manage that, or will have access to that data. But that is pretty consistent across the municipal policing environment about how the integration between municipal police departments and cities work. Payroll is one of those things that's just too big and expensive for us to do on our own.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Sorry, Armina, Director Briscard, thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Deputy, for your report and great news all around, especially around Prime. I just missed what you said about CPIC. So we do have CPIC, or it's still underway?
As much as that should be an easy question to answer, it's a bit complex. So the CPIC has actually taken probably a year with different milestones to be able to get to this point. So the first part was in January of 2021, where we made our submissions to MPIS about sending pictures of our architecture of what our data center will look like. That goes through an initial screening, and they provide an NCACR, is what they call it, sort of a conditional pass. Once they've done that work, they issue us a letter saying we are in fact a Category 1 CPIC police agency. That's a very important letter, and we've leveraged that letter in a lot of different discussions we had with other government agencies over time. So that's the first piece that was important. Between January 2021 and today, all that time has been spent building the data center, getting ready for the Prime connection. Now that we have that Prime connection, this is the other piece that's important, because then that leverages our way into actually using CPIC in a query browse process and be able to add to CPIC when we come to that time. So that Prime connection opens up a window to CPIC. But that Prime connection also allows us, or springboards us, into something I mentioned called CPIC Web, and that is a standalone direct line with National Police Information Systems, not going through Prime, but a direct line again, which is why they want the data center to be complete and the security pieces in place and whatnot. And just a last piece I'll mention, because I didn't mention this in the initial one, is having that Prime connection also allows us to springboard into other applications like Justin. So Justin is not something and not an application we have to manage. It's like a web app, but it opens the door to allow us to access Justin, start creating accounts. And Justin is the interface between police and Prime and Crown Council.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Director Clow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for your presentation. A question that comes to mind is, it seems we're ahead of schedule with some of these things, one of them being Prime. Is there any correlation? I guess my question is, once they're ready, once they're tested, can we just start using them? Or is there any correlation to being police of jurisdiction? Or is there anything to stop us from starting to utilize those systems once they're up and running?
So the only limit to using those systems is how quick we can build, and that's the piece that we're trying to strategize on right now. So Prime has several servers. There is what you're talking about is the production server. So the production server is where all the live police work happens. It's where you can browse and query files. When we start our build, we'll be in like a test server or test environment to do that build. But there's nothing stopping us from coming into production in some unique ways. Again, remember, you've heard me say before, like this is not something that's been done in British Columbia before. Prime Corp, this is new to them to stand up a new agency. So all of this is a bit of a greenfield area where there's no legacy decisions to guide how we go to our next steps. So we'll be making sure that we push to get into browse query as quick as we can, because that opens doors for us to start doing our own picks and our own security clearances without having to rely on others to do it. So yeah, great question. It does open the door to do that. There just needs to be a few more staging things that happen first.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any others. So motion to receive report. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor. Against, carried. Our next one is officer hiring and deployment. Chief, do you want to do that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And much like IT, we're moving forward. We have a number of milestones. Just to review, we have 63 people on the ground working side by side with the RCMP. We are looking to deploy 25 more in May. And you may have seen on our social media that this week we hired 14 brand new recruits that will be going to the JI next month. And I'm very pleased with this group. We had hundreds of applications. This group brings lots of diversity, certainly education, and a real connection to Surrey. Some of them even working in the various volunteer organizations. So they are presently on a 2-week training course with us before they go to the JI. All in, we have 196 police officers, and we continue to grow and continue to recruit, and we're looking forward to putting more and more boots on the ground in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, any comments, questions? Don't see any. So a motion for receipt of the report. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor. Against, carried. The third report is civil staff at transition to Surrey Police Service.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is such an important area. It's the 450 civilian staff that work in Surrey Detachment, and they will be coming over to the SPS. What we have in place is a successorship agreement. This is something that took some time to put together, obviously working with CUPE, and we're looking to put a plan together of who and when will be transferring to the SPS. That involves working, of course, with the Surrey Detachment leadership team. And so that is progressing, and it'll take a little bit of time. In the meantime, what we have done is we've had a number of town halls looking to connect with all the civilian staff. During COVID, we had it virtual, and now we're actually having in-person town halls where we explain what the transition is all about. We talk about the Surrey Police Service strategic plan. That is building the SPS, building our employees, and certainly our community policing model. And then there's a question and answer period, and we do get a lot of questions, and we even have a coffee and light lunch mixer thereafter the town hall. And so many of the civilian staff approach our leadership team and ask specific questions. So that is moving along well, and I'll frame it as saying it's in the planning stages, but we do have that connection with the civilian staff. That is my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. Any questions, comments? It's hard. Elizabeth, sorry, I can't see it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask the Chief one question. You had mentioned that there's lots of questions. Was there any, is there any hesitancy on the part of the staff, or what's the biggest questions they ask? What is their highest concerns, etc.?
Yes, thank you. The biggest question is, when am I moving over and exactly where am I going to go? So the simple answer is everybody will be moving over, but when that will occur for that specific individual has yet to be determined, because this is a transition plan and it'll be in waves, and we have to determine when those waves will occur and which units will go first. We're not there yet. So understandably, there's a little bit of anxiety on the part of the civilian staff as far as timing is concerned. But we certainly answer all their questions also pertaining to the difference between working for the federal government and working for a municipal police department. And we talk about our wellness programs. We talk about what we're all about and what we hope to accomplish in the next year. And of course, the bigger picture about the strategic plan that I mentioned previously.
Okay, thank you, Director Sonner.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, Chief Chappell? Nothing? Okay, everybody got an answer? Oh, okay. Director Briscard?
Thanks. Just to follow up on Elizabeth's question, is it anticipated then that when SPS is POJ, that all civilian staff will be transitioned over?
Probably, it's hard to say, not all, but I would say most. And our goal would be to have all of them under our domain, but some of those details still have to be worked out. And depending, of course, we're still going to have RCMP leadership there, and we're going to have middle managers of RCMP. So we'll have to work towards having that total transition. I'm going to say either at POJ, but I'm sensing a little bit after if I had to speculate, and that's what I'm doing here. So we have to work through those plans, but it would be the best case scenario, but we know that it won't always work out that way. So more to come in the future months as we work towards that POJ status.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Motion to receive, please. Somebody move it. Second, all in favor? Yes, carried. Under Executive Director now, Board Administration update, Melissa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is to advise the board the outcomes of the committees making decisions on who's acting as chair, as well as the role of the vice chair. For clarity around the vice chair role, it was decided between both Directors Sonner and Cloak that alternating on a 3-month rotation gives most clarity to the board, myself, and to the chair when required. For the committees, both Finance and Human Resources opted to maintain the status quo with their chairs, and the Governance Committee has opted to elect Jesse Sonner as the chair of the Governance Committee. So thank you to Director Chappell for his work on the Governance Committee as the chair, and we'll move forward for the next approximate year with these elections. So that's for your update.
Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, a motion to receive, please. Somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. So that concludes our open part of our board meeting. If somebody would move the motion to hold a meeting now in closed session, somebody move it. Seconder, all in favor, against, carried. Motion for adjournment. All in second, okay, all in favor, against, carried. So we're adjourned now.